Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Us. This film is really exciting to talk about, and specifically exciting to talk about it with a lot of spoilers. So I'm going to just talk about it in general, and then the rest of this is going to be a spoiler section. If you do not want this spoiled for you, you can watch the beginning. There will be a spoiler section at a certain point, so make sure you're able to hit stop at that point, or the K key, or whatever. Anyway, so here we go. Us is an exciting and thrilling, strange, weird, audience-friendly kind of movie. It's a big auteur statement that wants you to laugh and scream like you're seeing a big blockbuster movie. And as many meanings and themes and ideas are in this film, it wants you to have a good time. Well, okay, it wants you to have a good time, but there's some ideas behind that question all of that, but that's for later. But I think the thing with this film is it's a big auteur kind of statement. It sort of reminds me of Magnolia, Paul Thomas Anderson's his big celebrated film, Boogie Nights. I know he had Hard 8, but Magnolia feels more like a sophomore film than Boogie Nights does. And Magnolia is this big auteur, crazy, big statement. And Jordan Peele has done that with Us. This is far more complex. There's far more meaning in this. He definitely has something to prove in terms of, if you thought, oh, is he going to go to be a thriller director or something like that? And remember, he turned down Akira and doing $100 million movies. He wanted to make horror films. And this is a horror director kind of movie. This is a horror director filmography type of film. I get traces of Romero. I get traces of Wes Craven. I get ideas that you can see from John Carpenter. Like, you get the big horror auteurs within this. Like, Jordan Peele wants to be a horror director. It wasn't like a one-off weird experiment. Even though in that he's playing with the genre, and you could understand how he uses genre and uses film to say something, and he definitely did that with that film. This is more of a wholly original idea presented to you from someone who understands the usage and importance of horror with a metaphor. The metaphor is more looser and broad and so forth, and maybe not as directed, but it's there. And Us, I think, brings that out of itself. It is there to be a powerful kind of statement, but also be kind of an entertaining movie. It's first and foremost, when I'm in the audience of that film, like hearing people like scream and laugh and be relieved and scared, it felt like that was the most important part. It reminded me of James Wan in the theater. This is when I was seeing the film, the experience of it. It felt like James Wan, but more effective, more smarter than what James Wan is doing. James Wan, when he's doing a Conjuring film, he wants to scare you. It's a fun house, kind of haunted house sort of movie. When Jordan Peele's doing it, there's a reason he wants you to be scared, and there's a reason behind that. It's like if James Wan had a brain, I guess, because, he did direct Aquaman, so that's like his thing. You see that throughout this film is him as an entertainer as much as a horror director, and I think that's so amazing because you don't see this from mainstream Hollywood filmmakers anymore. None of them want to have the amount of meaning and layers that are within this film, and it's just frankly sort of beautiful about it. I love that about Us, and what it's saying about everything, what it's saying about ideas, what it's saying about horror, what you can do with horror, that you can have an auteur horror film. I mean, this is as close to something like John Carpenter's The Fog that I've ever seen, and it kind of is going out on the limb, like a horror director basically going like, I will die on this hill, and he means it with Us, and that is a hell of a powerful statement. Now, let's move on to spoiler talk, because I can't talk about this film without getting into it. But I will say, not knowing things with this film is important, and please don't get it spoiled for you. Get yourself to a theater, see it, and then come back. Do not watch this part. You might think you're being smart, but you're really just ruining an experience for yourself, and I don't think you need more of life ruined for you. So, assuming of course you've seen the whole movie, what the tethered represent is the shadow version of yourself. And this film was such an interesting experience because when I saw it, I didn't feel strongly about it initially leaving, but as I sat with it and thought about it and led my life and went through life, I couldn't get it out of my head. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I kept re-examining it. And the aftertaste of this movie is maybe better than the meal. The ideas within it, the ideas what this says about America and conflict and how we view each other. First off, it's a powerful film anyway, but learning that ending where you learn that Peter Nyong'o's character was switched when that little girl went through the Funhouse mirror place. Journey quest, spiritual quest, and then becomes a wizard thing. I guess they rebranded. And she sees her, and then you find out they did switch, and she kind of led this life. It says a lot about privilege. It says a lot about the wealth in America. It says a lot about the 1%. It says a lot about the baby boomers being able to ascend versus their children, the millennials. It says a lot about immigration. It says all these things, but what it essentially says is a very broad metaphor, but what it essentially is talking about is us ignoring something that we knew about all along. And I think the idea of it being from Lupita Nyong'o's perspective, most of this film, and the idea that she doesn't want to reveal the thing that eats her up inside, because she knew she's from there. She knew about that area. She was enough of an adult to have children, be successful, supposedly. I mean, they have another house, so I'm assuming they got money, although it feels like it was like her mom's house. Maybe they inherited it, but either way, it doesn't sound like they're hurting. She knew about this place and left it behind and felt this immense guilt and couldn't even really acknowledge it to us. Is she an unreliable narrator, or is she unreliable to her own self? And that's the sort of things I was thinking about. Jordan Peele's talked about how this is more about us as a society, and how America doesn't want to deal with the fact that, hey, we're like fucking racist as shit, and that's been a problem that has never gone away, and how the idea of generational trauma, the ideas that have moved on from generations, the ideas that will eat at cultures, the ideas that you can't get away from, and Us goes into that, and the idea of empathy, because as soon as you find out that they have switched, you are led to question her and reassess her revolution. But the idea of that switch, that protagonist switch, that you suddenly have more empathy for that side because you realize that she wasn't one of them, she was one of you, right? She wasn't part of the tethered, she was part of us, and if she's part of us, then that's okay. It's okay, and then if you have an enemy, they are in fact bad. And that is the troubling thing. That is the troubling thing that's going on. If you ever tried to talk to someone about politics, it's regardless if you agree with them or not. We are living in a time now where basically you can't disagree with. It's hard to get people to really deal with the consequences of things. It's hard to deal with you as your own to deal with the consequences of your own life. We all have to ignore things to get through the day. Or shouldn't we? Or should we? And Us re-examines all of that, because if we have to deal with the shadow reverse versions of ourselves, we would have to, in fact, deal with ourselves. If we would have to examine, if that is the reverse of me, what is me? And that is essentially what Us is saying, and what it's saying about America, and what it's saying about society. The scariest thing is that we have come to these extremes and will tear each other apart. And I think Us gets into that, these ideas that this thing that was dwelling underneath us, whether it's the Underground Railroad and slavery, which I don't think we've ever really come to terms with, whether it's the idea of how we basically, sort of took this whole country from the indigenous people that were here when we came, all these things that America doesn't fully want to get into. And Us deals with that. It's saying that this will become the thing that will take down all of us, that is eating us up inside, and we don't know it. But I think who is the main responsible is Lupita Nyong'o's character, who does an amazing performance. It's a Jekyll and Hyde level performance, right up there with Frederick March, and I mean that in all seriousness. If you don't know that performance, look it up. That's an amazing performance. Belongs up there in film history. It is truly amazing, and I honestly wish I could see this film a second time. The experience of this film will be rather different, and the experience of Get Out, by the way, is very different, but the only time you're going to get to see it, the more interesting time, is the first time. So if you're watching this and you haven't watched Us before, I'm sorry, it's been ruined for you. You'll not get that experience back by some jerk on the internet, but really the jerk is you. See, that's the twist. I really do like Us. I sometimes think the broad metaphors in horror is like something only Romero can really get done. And I think this sort of actually reminded me of People Under the Stairs, which was far more direct. But I remember like It Comes at Night that came out recently. I think it was It Comes at Night. It was very broad, and I actually didn't like that. I think sometimes you can just go too broad, and I think your net is maybe too wide, and this is like wide enough because it's talking about that anger, and that anger that's there, and that sense of responsibility, and that sense of playing with your interpretation of things, and your interpretation of a villain, and a tortured villain. And I know Jordan Peele said this is to remind you of the Universal monsters, and the Universal monsters had that pain, they had that anger, they had that way that you would go, well, he's not a monster, he there's a reason he's a monster. I can empathize with that. But that's the problem there, is like you can't see inside that monster. You can't see how he became that. Us is looking at all those things. It's not saying the people in the red coats and the scissors, which I don't really understand. Like, people are saying them in the red things, that's supposed to be Republicans. I think it's much broader than that. But I don't understand the scissors thing, or the rabbits. There's like a lot of things in here that part of me wants to think that there is no meaning and it's just crazy and weird and stuff. This is a big auteur statement. He's just swinging for the fences with all that. But another part of me thinks there's meanings behind them and I haven't gotten into them. And another part of me still kind of likes that I don't know the meanings of those things. I don't need to know. I like how open-ended and how much we can discuss this. I'm excited by this movie. I didn't get a lot of sleep, not because of this movie, just because of my life and all that. But I'm so excited today because of this film. This is the thing that Us has done. Jordan Peele is an amazing horror director. The fact that I'm still thinking about this film, you know how many films I see, and by the time it's like 2 o'clock the next day, I'm like, all right, I saw Triple Front, what's it? This is a powerful statement, the same way Get Out was. Jordan Peele is an amazing director, and I love the open-endedness. I love the weirdness of this. I love the cult moviness of this, and how he twists it all into being a big statement. And Hands Across America, the idea of this idea that we can fix things, that we will join hands, become as one, and do this thing, and how that idea is completely false, because as I was reading today, Hands Across America was a failure. I didn't participate in it. I'm old enough to have done that, but I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure. The idea of that hope, and when I was a kid, I believed in that hope of television and that idea of America, of that, like, hey, things are, racism is fixed, and I think AIDS are cured. I'm 9, I get things. I think that's the idea that they're gravitating towards, and it says the prosperity of America, and the way it's like U.S., like United States, and that people want that, and that once they aspire to get to there, they wanted to join hands, like in Hands Across America, which the shirt she had on when she went down there and started this revolution. Just the idea that they've been robbed of so much, when Elizabeth Moss, who does another, and Tim Heidecker is so ready for it feels like, you know what's funny, out of everyone in this, it feels like he's doing the least amount of change. I've seen him do this stuff before. It feels like he's the most comfortable. Like, everyone else is like doing these different things, and it's like, yeah, he could be the negative of himself, really. And doing that whole and then ooh is like very Tim Heidecker. But it's like perfect casting. But Elizabeth Moss, when she just puts the lipstick on her face, like, that's what she's been robbed. That's what she's wanted for so long. She's gotten to do that, mimic that, because of the tethering. And the idea that the government was behind this, and the government was trying to do this, and it failed so badly. The government was involved in this. Reminds you of what happened with Al-Qaeda in 9/11. It reminds you of so many things, and it talks about the power of a country that pushed it in so many ways and didn't understand what they were doing fully, and getting out of things and not fully helping. The idea of ignoring homelessness, the idea that that's what Hands Across America was supposed to do, and there's still homelessness and hunger, and a lot of that money didn't go to them, and it was a total failure. Well, a semi-failure. Like, this is the idea of America, that we ignore these things, that we let these things continue. And as a society, in all of the world's society, really, I don't think it is just America. It is broad in that sense, but it says an essential part of humanity, and that's the real genius of Us. I think that's one thing that this film will go on for a long time. I think it's so strange and weird and such a different kind of beast, you almost want to go, yeah, I don't know, it wasn't Get Out, but I don't think this movie ever wanted to be Get Out. And it's from the maker of Get Out, who understood how to use a powerful horror metaphor, and he made a more complex auteur statement. Honestly, after I left, I was like, I would like him to go back to Get Out, but I kind of want him to be just Jordan Peele and go off in these weird horror directions. He shot it, this amazing cinematographer, Mike Galukas, who also shot It Follows, which is very expressive in its cinematography. He did that in a way, it's kind of like a horror art movie that wants to play for the multiplex. Like, this film cares about its modern audiences understanding it and getting into it, and I think that is powerful. It's a powerful idea to get people to care about themes and ideas and have that within your horror film and still be an amazing, huge statement. I know we talk about a lot of directors who maybe do that, like Christopher Nolan, but this is like next level in terms of its meaning. This is Bergman level kind of film reading, and the more I think about it, the more I hear people write about it, the more I understand like what this says about America and what we hopefully tried to stand for and definitely failed, and whether the American experiment deserves to be overtaken. This talks about radical ideas, but also wants you to have a good time with your soda, and I can't think of a more radical kind of mainstream Hollywood film than this one right now. Or maybe we're just reading into all of it, but I like thinking about all those things. I love a movie that makes me think and it energizes me, and Us definitely did that, and I think Jordan Peele has really lived up to the promise that we were all hoping he would, but in a direction I don't think any of us thought he could. He cast this well, he directed this well, he wrote this well. This is the powerful Jordan Peele movie that we all kind of wanted him to make, but I don't think any of us were ready for and expecting, and that is an awesome time at the movies, and it was an awesome way to see such a powerful statement and really examine all of us. So if you have seen Us and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.